Day 4 of the FTC versus Microsoft trial has come to a close, and we're going to hear quotes from Satya Nadella, a few quotes from Bobby Kotick, and I have the documents before they were redacted because the court had some filing errors that we're going to take a look at together. And we have the email that sent Jim Ryan's alarm bells ringing, as well as an interesting exchange between Deering and Jim Ryan over at Sony. There's a lot to go over today, not just the trial stuff, but also the document issues. So let's get into it right now. So let's start with the case. And I think the big headline is that Satya Nadella said he would get rid of exclusives if it were up to him. Nadella: if it was up to me, I would love to get rid of the entire sort of exclusives on consoles, but that's not for me to define, especially as a low share player in the console market. The dominant player there has defined market competition using exclusives, and so that's the world we live in. He's referring to Sony, of course. The lawyer said, "Is that the world you'd like to be?" He phrased it sort of weird. "Is that the world you'd like to be the case in gaming? I have no love for that world," is what Nadella said. So if Nadella had his way, he's testifying that he would just get rid of exclusives across the board. Obviously, he might be hamming it up a little bit for the trial, but that is what he said. He also said that he would commit again to put COD on Sony PlayStation. So no player words. Here's what he said. The Microsoft lawyer said, "One of the first claims in this case is that Microsoft will be willing to forego sales of Call of Duty on the PlayStation to sell more consoles. Does that strategy make any sense to you?" Nadella: "It makes no economic sense and no strategic sense. As I said, our goal with Activision in particular, with their content, and quite frankly with our content, is to get our content on to more platforms and become a fantastic first-class publisher. And that's what we've done. For example, with Office, and I want to do exactly the same thing with gaming. Will you commit to continuing to ship Call of Duty on the Sony PlayStation?" Nadella: 100%. Now, the FTC lawyer had a very brief follow-up, and then my read on this was that the FTC was just sort of done. Like, he kind of hit all the talking points that they've already pounded into the ground. So they were sort of over it, and they were very quick with their reply. They just said, "You weren't personally involved with the negotiations with Sony regarding the proposal. Is that correct?" Nadella: "That's correct. No further questions, Your Honor." And that was it for the FTC's follow-up with Nadella. So at that point, I thought I was reading frustration in the courtroom based on what I was hearing, but I guess if you were listening, I'll leave that up to you, but that was my read on it and my reaction. Now, Nadella also pointed out that he did talk to Yoshida-san about COD on PlayStation and Jim Ryan. Why did he do this? I just wanted to make very, very clear with Yoshida-san, who I have a fantastic relationship with, that there should be no ambiguity in our support for the Sony platform going forward. And this Activision relationship, in fact, if anything, should help us reinforce our commitment to their platform. Have you reiterated that since then? Yes, multiple times. I had the chance to meet with Yoshida-san as well as Mr. Ryan subsequently, and I agreed it would be done. So just making sure I didn't miss anything. Yet again, he is confirming, Nadella is confirming, Phil Spencer confirms that there's no plan to pull Call of Duty on PlayStation. I have to imagine that narrative on the Sony side is done and dusted, because every story is basically calling Jim Ryan a liar right now. Well, not every story, but I mean, he straight up told regulators he was worried about them pulling Call of Duty off of PlayStation. Now, we're actually going to read the email exchanges between Phil Spencer and Ryan in a second, but let's get through the rest of the day. Nadella also seemed to really believe in cloud. So here's an exchange he had. "Yeah, I don't think of it as strictly a substitute to the console. I mean, at least the market feedback to date has been people love their console, people love their PCs, people love their phones, and use cloud gaming as an adjunct. The Microsoft lawyer said, and by allowing those lower power devices to play high intensity games, cloud gaming potentially expands the overall gaming market. That's correct, Nadella. That's correct. The lawyer said, the title here is MetaQuest event, referring to an email. And there's a part of the chain where you write, I want this to be like, say, Samsung TV, like socket for us when your schedule allows, and they have the volume. Now he's referring to being able to plug in some sort of device to a television, right? I want to make it clear to the world that Microsoft is focused on cloud-first approaches for xCloud, Teams, Windows 365, xCloud, of the future of their end-use sockets. I want to use basically every opportunity to make cloud streaming more mainstream. The better it is for us in the long run for all the strategic reasons we have talked about. And I believe he's referencing an internal email there. So we're going to get to Kotick's comments here in just a second. But if you like this content, hit that subscribe button. My subscribe button's not working today, so you're just going to have to hit it. Here, I'll make it work really quick. Play. Go. All right, well, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. If you're already subscribed, hit that like button so you know when the content goes live. The whole setup's probably falling apart right now because my hard drive space is getting full, but I do really appreciate y'all. I'm just trying to figure out why that's not going. Anyway, continuing on here. Bobby Kotick confirmed a new Switch. The FTC, given the closer alignment to Gen 8 platforms in terms of performance in our previous offerings on PS4/Xbox One, it is reasonable to assume that we can make something compelling for NG Switch as well, next gen Switch. Is that correct, Mr. Kotick? That's what it says. Now, the FTC, what's happening there, the FTC is reading an email that was posted internally and just asking him if that is a correct statement, and he has confirmed it. So basically, Bobby Kotick just revealed that, yes, there is a next-gen Switch in the works, and finally, we know it is true. Later, he was asked about adding Call of Duty to the current Switch. I believe this is the Microsoft lawyer, and he basically responded, yes, I think we can make a great video game for the Switch. Obviously, they've talked about this a lot, so of course he's going to say that. There was one other quote from Kotick. This is sort of a funny one. FTC, you said playing Call of Duty on a phone would be like using a refrigerator for a safe, right? Kotick just said, I think so. So I guess they're saying the Switch is bad. Like, I guess that was the argument that they were trying to make. But I did find it quite funny that they would go that route, right? So now we're going to transition to sort of loosey-goosey mode and go back in time a little bit and look at some of the things that have been reported by, various outlets, including the fact that Microsoft wanted to acquire Square Enix. This was via Stephen Totilo. Strategy approval, Square Enix. Going concern and dyssynergies. We will continue to ship and operate all of Square Enix's currently announced and released games across all relevant platforms. This would add substantial first-party revenue across console, PC, and mobile. Our operating plan calls for us to ship all future Square Enix releases into Xbox Game Pass on day and date basis. And preference Project Scarlet. We anticipate that this plan would have a negative impact on Square Enix's existing transactional gaming business by cannibalizing some portion of base sales on both owned and competing endpoints. So that's what Totilo posted. The reason I find that compelling is because it does mean that Square Enix is up for sale. Now I have to wonder, does Sony have an offer out there for Square? Is that why they're partnering more often with Sony rather than releasing things on Xbox? Are they trying to gain leverage? Microsoft is kind of at a standstill. They can't do anything until this trial closes. So there is a potential that they purchase Square Enix. And if you'll remember, a bunch of the old Final Fantasies were on Game Pass for a while. So we'll see what happens there. in addition to all that, this is what The Verge reported: combining Square Enix's robust mobile native portfolio with our own could potentially help us create a mobile native Xbox Game Pass SKU. The document reads, adding that the publisher's games, which include ports of classic games sold at a premium, would have substantial value for a subscription service. I'm guilty of it. I think I have Final Fantasy II on my phone still, but Microsoft's whole thing is that it is a revenue play and a play on mobile. So maybe they see a lot of value there with Square. Continuing on, though, Xbox also wanted to acquire Sega and Bungie. I actually have this document open right now, as well as like a whole bunch of other stuff that I have ready to go for today. So long story short, they are pretty serious about acquiring other companies. And I'm going to bring up the full email right now. Boom. So this is the actual email. The evidence is out there about acquiring the company. And basically it reads, I'm writing to request strategy approval to approach Sega Sammy regarding a potential acquisition of their Sega gaming studios. For context, Bill and I have reviewed the business case for acquiring Sega and are both supportive. We believe that Sega has built a well-balanced portfolio of games across segments with global geographic appeal and will help us accelerate Xbox Game Pass both on and off console. So this is a whole email about them outlining half of Sega Sammy's revenue and operating income are 900 million of revenue and 60 to 90 million of operating income. So there's some interesting stuff in here, but basically, yes, they wanted to buy Sega and they were interested in acquiring Bungie. We'll get to that in a second, because there was also this email that I wanted to revisit from the other day where they basically said they wanted to spend Sony out of business. Obviously not a great quote for Matt Booty to have on display here at trial. And I'm going to see if I have the email myself. Yeah, here it is. Lots of documents to go through. Thanks for sharing. A lot to digest here. We'll read in detail. A different view to the general view below might be that we, Microsoft, are in a very unique position to be able to go spend Sony out of business. If we think that video game content matters in 10 years, we might look back and say, totally would have been worth it to lose $2 billion or $3 billion in 2020 to avoid a situation where Tencent, Google, or Amazon, or even Sony have become the Disney of games and own most of the valuable content. For example, it is practically impossible for anyone to start a new video streaming service at scale at this point. What content do you base it on? That's really interesting, and that's actually really compelling evidence for the FTC. I know it's from 2019. I know that he refuted it during his testimony, but this is what the FTC is trying to prove. The FTC is trying to say, look, they want to be a monopoly basically in the market, and if they're able to cast enough doubt on the narrative that Microsoft has been putting forth during the trial, then the judge might lean in their direction. So I did find that kind of interesting. Also, there was also an issue with the document, so I'm going to shout out The Verge here, and then we're going to get a little bit even more loosey-goosey as we go through the documents ourselves. The Verge said the court has scrambled to remove the document, but the damage is done. Reporters in Sony's competition have already downloaded the documents while they were in the public domain. Among other things, the document shows that Horizon Forbidden West apparently cost $212 million over 5 years with 300 employees, and The Last of Us Part 2 cost $220 million with around 200 employees. And you can see the documentation here. Now, since then, they've pulled everything offline, but I'm a crazy person and I downloaded all the documents already. So I have the versions, and for the rest of this, I thought we would just sort of go through them. Before we do that really quick, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, because it's working now. Let's go. And if you already are subscribed, hit that like button. But in all seriousness, I just wanted to do that as a joke. We're going to go through these. It's going to get a little loosey-goosey because it's a lot to go through. And I think we'll start, I had it queued up earlier, but we started going through stuff together with this email between Deering and Jim Ryan. Now you have to read these sort of backwards, but anyway, this was entered into evidence. So here's Chris Deering talking to Jim Ryan. Phil Spencer was in CNBC saying that the acquisition would cement Microsoft as a player in mobile games. Strikes me as more of a King play than COD, but King sold to Bobby for $5 billion and has now grown to be worth $50 billion. If it was a Xbox exclusivity play, Spencer could have locked up Microsoft console exclusivity for the next 3 COD releases for maybe $5 billion. The major cash out will lure most of the talent to take the money and run as fast as their contracts will allow, leaving Microsoft with a very gnarly management challenge. I bet Yves, is he talking about Yves Guillemot over at Ubisoft, is smiling like the Cheshire cat. That's so I'm wondering, is he talking about Guillemot over at Ubisoft? Because are they planning on buying Ubisoft? Anyway, if this was a play to end run PlayStation 5, etc., I think it was massively overvalued and will not meaningfully succeed. I guess Microsoft can piss away that kind of valuation without being more harmed than helped. But I am not losing a wink of sleep over the future of our baby. Hope you agree. P.S. They would have been better off announcing a new electric car. Chris. Oh my God. So all that nonsense about them being scared, that's Deering basically saying, this is ridiculous. Why are they throwing away their money? And it's ironic because that's what people were saying about Sony buying Bungie, I remember. So let's read what Jim Ryan's response was. It's not an exclusivity play at all. They're thinking bigger than that, and they have the cash to make moves like this. We heard this in his testimony. I've spent a fair bit of time with both Phil and Bobby over the past day. I'm pretty sure we will continue to see COD on PlayStation for many years to come. We have some good stuff cooking. Keep your eyes peeled. I'm not complacent, and I'd rather this hadn't happened, but we'll be okay. We'll be more than okay. I don't know if this is supposed to be in evidence or not, but yeah. Anyway, Chris says, okay, then I shouldn't worry about stock. Sony stock dropped 12%. I think that was overdone. That said, at almost $130, I think it was a bit toppy. So he's saying the stock was overvalued and that he believes this is just the market adjusting for a correction. And who knows what Sony's at today, given the way the markets are going right now. Some real quick stuff. This was brought up. Foreclosure of the dominant players is a most unusual claim. They talk about Q4 console unit sales. So Xbox sold 3.2 million, Sony sold 7.1 million, and then you can see monthly active users. Xbox is 50 million, PlayStation is 107 million. You can see across the board, Xbox is not close to where Sony is, and their goal with this purchase is to get some traction. And this report is from Keystone, Christina Cafara, from February 21st, 2023. So yes, we hear a little bit more about console sales, but that was interesting. And also, here was sort of an interesting one. I don't know why this is in evidence, but this is a list of every Xbox Game Studios game that is on PlayStation. And as you can see, there's tons of stuff from ZeniMax on here. Ninja Theory had Hellblade on there. So Compulsion's We Happy Few was on there. Double Fine had Rad, and Double Fine had Psychonauts, the original Psychonauts. So that must be a point of evidence for Microsoft to show, look, we've already released a ton of stuff on there. There's the acquisition of Bungie document. The last one I think I want to go over was, well, no, there's actually more we'll go over. Sorry. This was the email that Jim Ryan sent between Phil Spencer. This is around May 23rd. And then there's another email from August that sent alarm bells ringing, if you'll remember. So Jim, I'm writing the follow-up on our prior discussions about Microsoft's intent to honor all existing agreements between Activision and Sony and our desire to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. As you'll recall, on January 31st, 2022, I sent you a written agreement with my signature memorializing Microsoft's commitments to Sony. Among other things, the proposed agreement provided that Microsoft will keep all existing Activision console titles on Sony, including future versions of Call of Duty including future versions in the Call of Duty franchise or any other current Activision franchise on Sony through December 31st, 2027. This was sent in 2022. I've said before that this is the right thing to do for gamers and for the industry, and I stand by that. This is Phil Spencer speaking to Jim Ryan. When we last spoke on April 28, 2022, you shared Sony's counteroffer to our proposed agreement. I want to make sure I understand your proposal as it included some unusual terms. You told me that Sony is seeking the following terms, redactions. If I have misunderstood any aspect, I'm going to have to take this into Photoshop and see if I can see anything, because apparently these were the documents that weren't redacted properly. Anyway, if I have misunderstood any aspect of the terms Sony seeks, please let me know. I look forward to hearing from you and continuing the conversation. Thanks, Phil. So that was Phil's response. That was in May 23rd, 2022. They made the same mistake during the deposition. That's funny. And that's what he said. But the one that was particularly interesting was the one between Phil Spencer and Jim Ryan. Where's the one dated 8? I got to find it. Sorry. I had it. You know, some commenter made fun of me because I don't always have everything perfectly prepared. So just give me 2 seconds and I'll bring it up, and that commenter can yell at me again. Thanks a lot, commenter. Let me see. It's PX3106, if you were wondering. And here so this is the one that sent alarm bells ringing. Jim, thank you for your response. Let's read it backwards again, because Jim Ryan has this big long thing, and then Phil Spencer is replying to Jim Ryan, and we'll probably never see emails like this again, so I find it particularly interesting. So this is on May 26th. This is the email we just read. This is Jim Ryan's response to that, I believe. So let's let me just find it quick here. Boom. So yeah, it was on the 23rd. We got that email from Jim, and then on the 26th. Yeah, so let me just put them side by side. It's a lot of documents to organize. So on the 23rd, I told you it'd be loosey-goosey. On the 23rd, Phil sent that to Jim. On the 26th, this was Jim Ryan's response. Phil, thank you for your email. We agree that ensuring Activision Blizzard games are available on PlayStation is the right thing to do for gamers and the industry. However, Microsoft's original proposal did not fulfill this objective and left us with serious concerns that our counter proposal is designed to address. Far from being unusual, our counter proposal represents the minimum needed to respect gamers' interest and maintain competition. So he's a little spicy in this email 3 days later. We believe there are two fundamental principles that are critical to mitigating the potential negative impact to gamers from the Activision acquisition. The first principle is that the commitment to availability of Call of Duty and other Activision games on PlayStation must be sufficiently broad to fully align with gamer expectations. To do the right thing for gamers, it is not enough to represent that a particular selection of older titles will remain on PlayStation. Rather, it is essential to agree that all Activision titles will be made available on PlayStation, irrespective of their original release dates or whether they can be classified as part of a particular franchise, just as they have been historically. And this commitment needs to be a lengthy one, not just a few years after the acquisition. So you'll read in the previous email, it was a 5-year offer, and now that's expanded to 10 years. And Jim Ryan continues on. The second principle is that in addition to addressing the scope of the content available on PlayStation, the parties' agreement must address the manner in which the games will be made available. If Activision games are made available only on terms that are disadvantageous for PlayStation in comparison with other platforms, this could be tantamount to not making them available on PlayStation at all. As one example, making Activision games available on PlayStation after those games have been made available on Xbox will be contrary to the spirit of Microsoft's commitment to keep Activision games on PlayStation, as well as being unsatisfactory for gamers. With these principles in mind, let me briefly address the contours of, oh my goodness, it's a very long email. The contours of our counter proposal. The first term of our proposal is designed to advance the first principle stated above, i.e., satisfying gamer expectations by ensuring that all Activision games are available on PlayStation. Please note that the reference to price parity relates specifically to the wholesale price on which PlayStation has offered Activision titles for resale on the PlayStation Store. He's pushing to sell the games at $70 is my read on that. The second term of our proposal is designed to advance the second principle described above. Unequal treatment of Activision games and subscription services would lead to unequal availability on the games. As long as you agree to the fundamental principle, Activision games should not receive unequal treatment on the party subscription services. We are open to further discussing the details of how this might be accomplished. He's talking about PlayStation Now or whatever it's called. I think it's just PlayStation Plus now, but he's saying, we want it on our subscription service if it's going to be on yours. That's my read anyway. The third term of our proposal simply recognizes the reality that upon completion of the acquisition of Activision, it would not seem to make logical sense for the financial marketing and other arrangements previously negotiated between SIE and Activision to continue to apply in the post-acquisition world. We believe this common sense step is to the benefit of both Microsoft and SIE. Regarding Bethesda, I was making a more general point during our discussion that the equal treatment of Bethesda games would be a logical subject for the parties to discuss because it involves some of the same concerns as the availability and or unequal treatment of Activision games. We would welcome discussing this subject as part of an agreement that advances the two fundamental principles discussed above. He's asking for Starfield. That's really interesting. So Jim Ryan is basically saying there, hey, you want to talk about Activision? We want the Bethesda games back. So he's potentially, that could be the entire holdup. He's trying to leverage the Activision deal to get Bethesda games back on PlayStation. I've been pretty critical about Sony, but that's smart. That is a smart business strategy on Jim Ryan's part. And I have to imagine that is what has been holding up this deal. I like to read these and react to them, by the way, because we sort of have the revelations together. But anyway, whatever. We would appreciate your confirming that these terms are acceptable as a framework for the parties to negotiate an appropriate written agreement. If you can confirm this, I will instruct my team to get started immediately on preparing an agreement that can be finalized following negotiations with your team. Please let me know if you have any further questions. I always thought it would be vice versa, and we're going to read Phil's response to that in just a second, because this is the email that sent alarm bells ringing, remember? So it's going to be interesting to hear how Phil Spencer replied. Maybe Phil Spencer's reply is much shorter, but super interesting. So Jim Ryan is trying to leverage the Activision deal to get Bethesda games back on PlayStation. I should have made this just a whole separate video. This is great. Anyway, Jim, thanks for your response. As I stated to you in my emails and on our calls, Sony is an important distributor of Activision content, and we would like to find a way to maintain that relationship once we've closed the Activision acquisition. I continue to stand behind the written agreement I sent you on January 31st, 2022, with my signature memorializing our commitment to Sony. The agreement would keep all existing Activision console titles on Sony, including future versions in the Call of Duty franchise, or any other current Activision franchise on Sony through December 31st, 2027. That's 5 years because this was written in 2022. That includes content and feature parity, as well as making it clear that we would not feature any timed exclusive releases of such content on Xbox consoles. It's hard to align the principles set out in your email of May 26, 2022 with Sony's leading role in the market. As I said before, we believe that keeping these titles on Sony, as we did with Minecraft, is the right thing for the industry and for gamers. Do you see what's happening there? Phil Spencer is saying, oh, we're going to bring back those other franchises that we're not talking about or make new IPs, and those are going to be exclusive to our platform. Jim Ryan is calling that out. That's why his alarm bells went crazy, because Phil Spencer isn't budging on that. He's like, look, you're the market leader. We got to have something. We're willing to give you Call of Duty. We'll give you a Diablo. We'll give you Overwatch. Like, we're not worried about those IP. But we do want to leverage the Activision library to have exclusives on the Xbox ecosystem. Now, this is just me reading between the lines. So I'm not like we read the email together. This is my real reaction to it. I think Jim Ryan is trying to leverage the deal to get Bethesda games back. And when Phil Spencer said, yeah, no, like, we won't gain market share if we just give you everything. So it also is sort of counter to what Satya Nadella said, right? Anyway, man, that was a very, very interesting exchange to read out loud. There's an email about the Project Relic, aka Indiana Jones announce. Not a ton compelling in there. There's the Matt Booty email about buying Sony out of business. And then there was one more document that was really interesting about Call of Duty revenue. Wow, huge percent of COD revenue. Yes, the table below highlights the platform splits with each segment. At the bottom, 136 million of the 435 million within Activision's 30% is from COD Mobile. That's from Tim Stewart to Phil Spencer. I believe this is when they're trying to work out the deal. And no, it's May 2nd, 2022. So Phil Spencer is just making a comment. Wow, your mobile market makes a ton of revenue. And I remember calling that out in my original video. I'm like, oh, they get King. That's the play. So for all this drama about it, it's really interesting. Now we're going to look at one last document. I probably should have ended on the Jim Ryan one, and I apologize for this going so long, but I hope you're liking it as much as I am. So there's this document, and then there's this one. Oopsies. So you'll see somebody made a mistake with these two documents, because I don't think we're supposed to know that they're trying to purchase Bungie and IO Interactive. So here's the unredacted version. Some stories were written about it, and I thought we would go through side by side, because this is redacted and this is the original that was filed. And basically they're saying, they're talking about M&A, which is acquiring companies. They have gaps like lack of content supporting audience expansion, and they need to enhance our ability to engage audiences. So recommendations: sourcing the highest fidelity, most attractive franchises will continue to be a priority. The gaps identified suggest the need to complement traditional areas of franchise strength with content aimed at expanding audience and fostering social engagement. On console and PC, developers they were identifying include Bungie and IO Interactive. Developers focused on casual included Scopely and Niantic, and on mobile, Zynga and Playrix. So we know how that all played out with the Zynga case. Sorry, I'll keep them up. So here is the redacted version, right, which they screwed up and filed. M&A final wish list. So it's redacted here. Let's scroll down here. Oh, whoops. Sorry. So anyway, the audience expansion was Thunderful, Supergiant, Niantic, Playrix, and Zynga. And engagement and social interaction, audience expansion was Bungie, IO Interactive, Hitman, and Scopely. So I have to imagine these are still in talks. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to see what they were trying to hide throughout this document. There's a lot of interesting information in here. Number 3, final list, page 13, right? Oops. I'm probably a little too happy about this, but this is interesting. 17 top candidates for consideration on console and PC. Developer, Behavior Interactive. Housemarque was a consideration. Returnal developers, one of my favorite games of that year. People Can Fly and Remedy Entertainment. I guess Housemarque's out of the picture, but that could potentially be why Sony's like, we need to get Housemarque. Like, we need to get them right now. So maybe it worked out quite well. Self-publish, 11-Bit Studios, Bohemia Interactive, Bungie, Crytek. I think that would be a good partnership. IO would be a good partnership. Larian Studios, they're making something 3, Baldur's Gate 3, I think. Anyway, Manicore Games, they make like they're trying to do a Epic Game style thing, like a Fortnite sort of thing where you can make your own games. Anyway, or Dreams would be a good comparison. Playdead, Rebellion Developments, Thunderful, and Supergiant Games. And then in addition, Paradox Interactive, who's a publisher, and Sega. So remember how Microsoft said they're not done with their M&A? Well, based on this document, they sure as heck are not. All right, so let's see what we got on the next page, because we got another redacted page. Oops. 4, top console and PC. That's the thing I do with my son. Oops. And then we... Anyway... the following developers add the most value to Xbox ecosystem by addressing the gaps identified. Bungie and IO, Supergiant, and Thunderful. So, I mean, are we going to see something interesting happen there? The filtering. Here is the whole filtering thing. Oh, what? Okay, so here's their targets. 13 publishers, 2 publishers, high casino revenue targets. That's a weird way to phrase it. Like you're cashing in on your customer base. What? Oh, they're talking about casino games, like actual casino games. Anyway, I don't know why this was redacted. Is there something on here? Like it's publicly available data on App Annie. So I'm not. Is this how many targets they're trying to get? I don't really understand what I'm looking at, but this was all redacted. So if you look at it, they're talking about their targets and they're talking about the different kinds of targets they would try and acquire. So people that make less than 100 million would be low revenue targets, right? Let's scroll down here. Final list, top 20 candidates. I think we know this already. Playrix, Zynga, Netmarble, Niantic, Scopely, Glue Mobile, and Game Evil. And then, wow, that one really got redacted. So double redacted, top mobile opportunities. I bet that's redacted. Yeah, okay. Whoops. Social engagement, Scopely, Niantic, Zynga. Playrix, Scopely, Niantic, Zynga were some of the companies that they were curious about buying. Let's go scroll down to 22. Oh my God. How did this get filed? Anyway, sorry. This is another final watch list. So you got Thunderful, Supergiant. We already kind of went over these. So they redacted it because they wanted to cover up. So let's go to page 26. Oh, it's the Zynga company overview and sort of the games that they developed. That's not that interesting. We all know what Zynga is. Zynga funding and ownership. Current. Oh. Okay, well, yeah. They probably... I understand why they redacted that one, actually. It's like... this is Playrix. Oh, man. It's all the company overviews. And they're like super redacted on this one. All right, well, it was filed legally, right? Playrix, so it's their company and whatever they make. Here's Niantic, the company overview. This is public information, though. I don't understand why it's redacted. Netmarble? I don't think that was one on the above documents. Oh, they make Marvel Contest of Champions. So they make mobile games. So this actually is good evidence for Microsoft in terms of their whole mobile narrative that they've been talking about. They're talking about Bungie here. Strategic rationale, top tier AAA, noteworthy IP ownership, Destiny, and they know about Marathon. They knew about Marathon. Anyway, risks. The NetEase investment. This has already been covered off on by other people, and then they redacted IO Interactive's financials or games for some reason. Twitch all-time peak viewers. It's interesting that they find that to be a metric. Like, I think a lot of that is who ends up playing your game, you know? Super Giant, Thunderful, and then some. Oh no, I closed it. Oh no, I closed it. This video is like super long. Everybody's bounced right now. Let me see if I got the non-redacted one handy really quick. Sorry. Now I gotta find it. There's like a code number. 1. I gotta find it. No, that's not it. It's what's RX 1141. Oh yeah. Okay. Down here. We are on page 36 of 51. What were they covering up? Oh, it's also redacted. Redacted. Dang it. Now I got to find the not before redacted version. Anyway, maybe we just call it there. Some pretty interesting stuff. If I find out anything else that's interesting, I will. There's no open recent, huh? Dang it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I got to get out of here. I told you it would get really loosey-goosey at the end. Did not make me make a 40-minute video. I'm a little tired. It's 2:32 in the morning. Lots of stuff to go over. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell so when my content goes live. Hit that like button if you ended up liking this video. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you for the members who support this channel. If you want to do so, I post these videos without ads. Just click that join button right down there. I'm going to get out of here. You want to see yesterday's recap? It's right here. I'll see you tomorrow. Closing arguments are tomorrow. We're recording Unlocked about that, and then I'll make this video in the middle of the night like I have been. Bye for now, everybody.